Owen and his company of dwarves that left to go west have made the journey to the Holland Gate. Piles of rocks block the way to keep the doors closed. Owen orders the dwarves to move the rocks, and then he pushes the doors open. With the doors open, they step outside into the moonlight. The moon is bright and lights up the gate behind them as they exit Moria. They pause, as the pool of water outside the gate doesn't look right. The water has turned black and appears deeper as it nearly goes up to the edge of the doorway. An ancient bridge that connected the gate down the mountains through the Red Horn Pass has also been destroyed. The only way down the mountain now is to traverse around the lake. A dwarf finds a large tree branch laying on the ground and attempts to find the bottom of the lake. Owen kneels down to look at the water. It is black and sickly. Some sort of ooze or tar now sits in the lake. Owen starts to get a bad feeling and orders the dwarves to turn back into the mine. They must warn Balin. The dwarf who stuck the branch into the lake starts to see ripples in the water. Something is moving. They should not have come here. Large tentacles start thrashing out of the water. Owen yells at everyone to run into the mines. As the dwarves retreat, a bunch of tentacles reaching out of the water start smacking the dwarves around and pulling others into the pool. Dwarves start chopping the tentacles as they pull dwarves into the water. A head of a giant squid-like creature comes out of the water and growls. Owen demands the dwarves to leave and warn Balin. He will slow down this creature of evil. The remaining dwarves head back into Moria. Owen stares down the Watcher in the water. He cleaves off many tentacles with Durin's mithril axe. Owen then leaps into the face of the Watcher in the water. Back in the Chamber of Mazarbul, the dwarves have gathered to witness the last moments of Balin. Ori has tried to heal Balin, but he has not improved. Balin has come to terms with his fate and asks to be buried here in the chamber. With great sadness, Ori clears the center of the room and orders dwarves to bring in stone slabs. They will lay them in the center of the room and sculpt a tomb for Balin. Ori chisels an inscription. Here lies Balin, son of Fundin, lord of Moria. Balin cries out in pain and begins to shake and tremble. Blood begins to pour out of his eyes and ears. Ori looks at him and begins to cry. He apologizes and assures Balin that the goblin who did this will pay. Ori grabs a small sword and plunges it into Balin's chest, making his death quick. The dwarves gently pick up Balin and place him in the tomb and seal it. The dwarves take a moment of silence. Ori stands there in sadness, staring at the tomb of his friend. The gathered dwarves look to Ori for guidance. Ori takes a moment to compose himself and gives out orders for the defense in the 21st Hall. Dwarves leave the chamber and get to work. It has been a couple days now since Balin's death. The east entrance in the 21st Hall has been destroyed to hopefully funnel the orcs through the south passage. Barricades and platforms have been built around the pillars of the hall in hopes to gain a height advantage over the orc army. Ori prepares to send those that cannot fight west. The dwarves that traveled with Owen, however, have returned. Ori is confused at their return, but is filled with great sadness and despair as he learns the fate of Owen. Ori yells in frustration. The brothers are gone, Hona is gone, then Balin, and now Owen too. With no chance to escape west with this Watcher in the water, there is no hope to survive. Ori stands there looking at his people. Tears begin to roll down their faces as they now too also begin to lose hope. Ori refuses to believe that this is the end for this expedition. Not everyone has to perish. He steps onto a platform and gives final orders to the expedition. Those who cannot fight will flee through the west entryway of the halls, and from there go south and down deeper into the mines. From there they can slowly return east and hopefully slip past the orc army and make it safely to the bridge of Khazad-Dum from there. Those that can fight will make a final stand in the Chamber of Mazarbul, Balin's tomb, and hold for as long as they can. The non-fighting dwarves say goodbye and thank Ori and those that stay for their sacrifice. They gather their belongings and head west out of the 21st Hall to hopefully find a way around the orc army. Those that remain with Ori move their defenses to Balin's tomb and start barricading the doors. Ori takes out his book and begins to write. We cannot get out. We cannot get out. They have taken the bridge and the second hall. Frar and Loni and Nolly fell there bravely, while the rest retreated to the Chamber of Mazarbul. We still hope for survival. Owen's party went 5 days ago, but today only 4 returned. The pool is up to the water at the west gate. The watcher in the water took Owen. We cannot get out. The end comes soon. A few more days pass as the dwarves wait for the end to come. They have been surviving on water that they could get from the well in the room. A dwarf runs in and announces the orcs have finally found them. Orc war horns sound their arrival and drums echo through the halls of Moria. Ori brings out his book and begins his final passage. Orcs start bashing on the doors. Drums. Drums in the deep. They are coming. The doors fly open and orcs and goblins charge in. The remaining dwarves put up a fight and kill as many as they can, but the overwhelming number of orcs and goblins becomes too much for the dwarves, and they quickly become surrounded. Orthog enters the chamber. He looks weak and sickly. Ori taunts Orthog and comments on his sickly appearance. Orthog growls. Ori charges Orthog with his axe and shield. Orthog takes out his bow and shoots a couple arrows. They are blocked by Ori. Orthog grabs his swords. Ori knocks one out of his hands with his shield and parries the other with his axe. Orthog tries to fight back, but Ori kicks him, knocking him to the ground. He stares into Orthog's eyes. For Balin. Ori slashes Orthog across the face with his axe, killing him. Ori then turns back up towards Balin's tomb. He stands beside it and looks around. He is the last dwarf alive. Ori fights for as long as he can, but is stabbed in the back. He slowly falls down to the ground, back against Balin's tomb. The dwarves who attempted to escape and go around the orc army were discovered. Some tried to flee but ended up getting lost within the halls of Moria. Some stumbled into the abyss, allowing the nameless to grow.
The world is great, the mountains old, the forge is fire, is ash and cold. No harm is wrong, no hammer falls, the darkness dwells in Durin's halls. The shadow lies upon his tomb in Moria, in Khazad-Dum, but still the sunken stars appear in dark and windless Mir. There lies his crown in water deep till Durin wakes again from sleep.
Ori's body is seen lying next to Balin's tomb, as a time-lapse occurs with the decay of his body and the fading of his book and pages. As the time-lapse comes to an end, the Fellowship arrives with Gimli, mourning his cousin Balin. Gandalf picks up the book from Ori's hand and begins to read.
You cannot get out. They are coming.
Back in the abyss, piles of rocks are seen covering the entrance to an abandoned mine. A loud banging and clanking sound can be heard through the halls of Moria. A deep and angry voice is heard.
Fool of a took. Throw yourself in next time and rid us of your stupidity.
Drums begin to echo through the halls of Moria. Goblins and orcs begin to chuckle. The rock pile begins to shake. Rocks start to fall off, and then a shadow bursts out of the rocks. Fire spreads, and in the darkness, 2 red eyes form. Durin's Bane awakens and moves to the upper halls of Moria. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the final episode of Balin's expedition to Moria. That is indeed the end. That is the conclusion. Story's wrapped up, and we have finally finished the journey. Um, yeah. So let's talk about this episode. I I really enjoyed this episode. This was probably I think my favorite episode to write. Um, it's the final piece to the puzzle. It's the final moments of Balin's expedition, and it's the final, I guess, connecting that needs to happen between Tolkien's story, Peter Jackson's movie, and my story, just melding it all together to create, uh, yeah, this final image, I guess, this final adventure. And I had a lot of fun doing that. There was a lot of back and forth when writing this episode on the middle section about what to do. I knew I wanted to start it with Owen, and I wanted it to end, of course, as it did with the Fellowship arriving. But the getting there was a little bit tricky. I didn't know if I wanted to bring the Nameless back. I didn't know if I wanted to have the Belrog back and the goblins and orcs like unearth him again and like start worshiping the Belrog in some way. I didn't know if I want to fight in the 21st Hall that then transitions into the chamber or Balin's tomb. There's a lot of stuff that I was going back and forth on, and I really thought hard about it, but it started to become too layered and too complicated, and the flow of the story didn't make sense. Uh, so I tried to end it with the best way I could, where there's a group of dwarves that isn't able to fight or don't want to fight or whatever, and they still have a hope to escape. And it's possible because Moria is massive. Its scale is enormous, and it's really hard showing that or conveying the true size of Moria, which is why I tried to throw in those maps as much as possible because it's massive. So realistically, a group of dwarves could, go around the borders of Moria, go onto different levels, and the orcs could be above them when they're below them, and they're going underneath and wrapping around. They could do all of that. Um, and that way, then I could kind of show or reestablish the abyss and the nameless again. But ultimately, though, everyone does have to perish. Uh, because Gimli and many other dwarves believe that Balin still existed or was still around when the Fellowship arrives in Moria. Gimli goes in thinking he's going to see his cousin, and he sees no one. So no one can escape. The Balin's expedition, none of them can escape. So that's why it's written that they all do get caught. But it was a way to just further enhance the scale, tie the Nameless back in because Gandalf has to come across the Nameless. And then I just saved the Balrog section for the very end. I thought about trying to have the Balrog make an appearance again, but it messed with the flow, and I thought this was more perfect in that it's the Fellowship that wakes the Balrog up, and I just think it's kind of funny, and it adds some more character and journey for the Balrog in a weird way, where we see the Balrog, the dwarves blow up a cave entrance, cause it to collapse on the Balrog, and the Balrog just gives up trying, and so he's got to take a long nap. He's got to go back into have a nap, deep slumber. 25 odd years later, he gets disturbed from his sleep. He's super pissed off. Thinks about I was trapped here by dwarves. I'm getting out. I'm gonna do everything I can to get out. And then the next thing he sees is Gandalf. He's charging through Moria, going to kill these dwarves for locking him in a mine shaft, and he sees Gandalf next. I don't know. I just think that's really funny. and just adds some fun little character to the Balrog. So that's why it was that way. But it just it flowed nicer this way. And then you have the parallels and the similarities between the Fellowship. What they went through is very similar to what Ori and the remaining dwarves went through. So those parallels was really fun to write and was really fun to just meld together. And then as Ori's writing, Gandalf is reading it. It's just I don't know. It was a really cool experience to go through when I was writing it. So that's why it is the way it is. But you could easily change it, and the Balrog's roaming around and kills the remaining dwarves that the orcs don't. Or the Balrog breaks out again, and because they didn't deal with the Balrog the first time properly, then he comes back. Um, the orcs start worshiping him, bring the nameless into it more. There is so much that you could do with it. This is just what I felt was I felt made the most sense, or at least flowed better than everything else that I came up with. Well, yeah, that's really it. There isn't much I think to talk about, because it was just a kind of a short, simple episode. Obviously, on TV it would be much longer, way more dramatic. Um, you could see the you could maybe add in where does Owen end up? Like he ends up where did him and the Watcher end up? You could play with that a bit. He obviously doesn't kill the Watcher, but does he does he get sucked into the water? Does he just get eaten? There's some stuff you could play with there. What happens to the axe? Um, so there's definitely some stuff to play with in the future. Um, yeah, it was just a lot of fun, and I really hope you enjoyed it. And I thank you to those that watched every episode, been leaving comments, giving me your feedback. I'm really appreciative of it all, and it's all I really want. Like the big dream of this was to share this story and just get it heard, get people talking about it, so that Peter Jackson makes this movie. If I could be a part of it, great. Do I think that's going to happen? Probably not. But I would love that to happen. But ultimately, I just want the story to be told. And the only way for that to happen really is for people to talk about it. Get the world, get Peter, get Warner Brothers, get people to know that we want this story told. So the more we talk about it, the more you share it and leave it in different communities, the more you comment, the more that YouTube pushes it out, the more that happens, the more likely that this story will be told. Um, so I really hope that happens. So once again, thank you very much. I really do appreciate all the feedback and all of you that have uh, hung out and watched all the episodes, been enjoying the story, and will continue to watch more. So yeah, next week what I'll do is there'll be a bit about like the history and like the progression of the script, so why I chose this story, how I went about writing it, when I what happened with it when I sent it to Amazon, what happened with it when I sent it to Warner Brothers, and how we kind of ended up here today. Because yes, this was sent to Amazon, and this was sent to Warner Brothers. Um, but ultimately, we got Rings of Power and The Hunt for Golem. uh, but that we'll talk more about that next week. Yeah. So thanks for sticking around. I appreciate you all. Until next time, I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.